Okay. So, trying to see if we can make this work. This is the first time I'm actually going to YouTube. So I ran into an issue with here we go. Just mute this. I ran into an issue with um Facebook. Been having an issue actually for quite some time. And the issue is pretty simple. It's two-factor authentication issue that it's really freaking annoying the heck out of me because the whole idea of two-factor authentication is for security. I get that. I used an app that stopped working for me for my authenticator. Before Facebook had an authenticator, they allowed these third-party apps, and I used this third-party app, and it stopped working. And Facebook, ever since, this has probably been a year going, I was locked out for a long time. They didn't even have access for me, the ability for me to even access the Facebook account. But for a long time, it just didn't give me access. And that was obviously frustrating, but I was pretty much off Facebook for almost a year, maybe. It's a long time. Um, it was definitely a lion's share of a year at the very least. Um, and it just was impossible. Finally, they got this video, authentication. You show like your video of your face and so on and so forth. And that's that I'm meta verified. So I have already a meta verified account that I paid for, and finally I get access to the account using this like video authentication function. But what ended up happening is that I did get access to my account, and I've gotten access. Excuse me, I have to set up my stuff. I've got access to my account before. I've gotten access to my account before, and I don't want to set this up. Make sure some of that stuff in the background shows. I've gotten access to my account before. And so I got access to the account, but it wouldn't give me access. It still doesn't give me access to there we go. It doesn't give me access to the two-factor authentication setting. So I have the ability to get access to my account, but if I want to change any security settings, no option. Like I have no ability to change any of my security settings because guess what? I need the two-factor authentication code in order to be able to adjust my settings. So it's kind of it's been quite a frustrating situation. Oh, it looks like Tanya called me. So she's going to be coming. It should be in both of inboxes. So we have a really cool person. Her name's Tania Matthews, who we're going to have as a guest today. And right now, I'm just kind of chopping it up with you guys until she gets on. We're still early. We don't really officially start till 8:30, but so we're a few minutes early. But she should be jumping on any minute now. Hopefully she got the link. She did call me, but my phone. I always forget. I put my phone on do not disturb in the morning, so oftentimes I miss calls and text messages prior to 9 o'clock. So, but I did see she did call me. So hopefully she got my text message and she can get on. There she is. All right. She's going to join us right now. So we're going to get started. Exciting. All right. All right. Tanya, you're in. There
There.
you are.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Yeah, so I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Oh, I appreciate the opportunity.
Now you're up in is it New Jersey or
Maine,
Connecticut or something? Maine. Oh wow, you're all the way up there.
way up here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Very cool. So I guess I'll do the brief, fast and quick intro. For those of you guys tuning in, this is a live interview with Tania Matthews. This is the Ortiz Anomaly podcast. My name is Gus Ortiz. I am the KW Commercial Director and the Productivity Coach for our Market Center here in Claremont. And I have the wonderful and distinguished honor of having Tania Matthews, one of the most established agents that I'm familiar with, sweetest lady you'll ever meet, and amazing realtor, here to just kind of share some of her wisdom with us on the podcast today. So thank you, thank you, thank
Oh,
you for coming to join us today, Tania.
thank you. That was a very sweet comment. Thank you, Gus.
Thank you. All right, awesome. So the reason why I wanted you to come on this podcast, the reason why I really, one of the things that really struck me about you and your business is you just have this really deep passion to help people.
Mm,
And it's something that like it's so evident in the things that you do and the things that you say and just how you behave and stuff like that. And that's something that's really powerful for me. I think that a lot of people who get into business of any type, you know, um, as an entrepreneur, the first thing that you think of, okay, I need to make money, right? But money will only do so much, and it's not going to be ultimately fulfilling. At least not for me. It does help. Don't get me wrong, it helps, but it's not the thing, at least not for me. And one of the things I really loved about you is just the way that you are, the way that you really care, and the passion that you have to help people, and you do it through real estate. And I'm sure you do it through other ways. I'm just familiar with you through real estate. So I'd love to kind of hear a little bit about like what got you even into real estate in the first place, and what kind of drove you to even want to do this kind of to get into this business, because this is not a it's as we say, it's simple, but it's not easy. Right?
absolutely.
So I just kind of want to hear a little bit about like what drove you to get into this business in the first place.
Absolutely. So I had homeschooled my children. My first career was pharmaceutical sales.
Oh
And
wow. Very different.
yeah. And then I had the blessing of being home with my children
Hmm.
and then homeschooled them. So when my last was getting ready to graduate, I was kind of like, okay, who am I? I'm not a person to necessarily sit home. And I started thinking about what was that person? And real estate had always been a huge draw. I wanted to invest in real estate. And I,
Yeah.
did all the Rich Dad Poor Dad series. Um, Definitely my passion and not my husband's. So as we got to that season, I'm like, okay, well, what can I do at this point? And I decided, hey, let's look into this real estate investment thing. So I started going across town to Lake Mary, believe it or not. You know how far that is for us, right? Going
Yeah.
across Lake Mary to investment meetings, and they were like, you should get your real estate license. And I'm like, absolutely not. I have no desire to be a realtor. So the second time they told me, I still was my stubborn self and said, mm-mm, not doing it. And so after about the third to the fifth time, I'm like, I did come over to learn from these people. I guess I should listen. So I
Yeah.
got my real estate license. Followed somebody that I knew was successful, and the conversation went something like this. You know her. It was MJ Coleman. I called MJ Coleman and said, "Hey, so I have this real estate license, and I don't want to be a realtor. I don't want floor time. I don't want to sell real estate. I just want to invest with it, but I
Yeah.
know it needs to be hung somewhere. What do I do?" And she said, "Do I have the company for you?" And
Oh.
she had just transitioned over to Keller Williams. So at that point, I started going to investment meetings at night, going to Hunter's Creek, which is where our office was at the time, and
Hmm.
learning about what it looked like because I'm not a halfway person. Like I've got to know what I'm doing. And
Sure.
so I went over and thought, okay, what do I need to do with this real estate license if I was going to use it, even though I don't want to use it? Did what was equivalent to Ignite over
Yeah.
there and took some classes over there. And that's how I ended up in the real estate world.
Hmm. Interesting. Okay. And then now what kind of switched your what was the switch that went from I'm just going to invest and do my own thing to I can help other people do this?
That's a great question. I appreciate you asking it. So my first two houses that I sold was from the demographic that I was around all the time, which was investors. And
Hmm.
those actually closed while I was in Europe. And that was pretty fun. And when I got to the end of that year, I said to my husband, I really, didn't want to be a realtor, but I feel like God's calling me to be a realtor. And I know what it's
Hmm.
like to not listen and follow after what he's told us to do. So I'm going to
Sure.
give it 1 year. It's a 24/7 gig, which was my mindset at that time, right? It's 24/7 gig. We probably want to calendar our relationship and figure out what
Yeah.
it's going to look like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I got on a plane and went to Anaheim. And we didn't have our office in Claremont at the time. We were still in Hunters Creek. We were, kind of folded into an area over there. So I didn't know a lot of people. I actually went to family reunion out there in February and stayed with some person from Wisconsin and, just kind of got introduced to Keller Williams. And when I walked in, I remember being blown away. The mindset that I had of what a realtor looked like, and then to take it to a corporate level and to see what Keller Williams was about, from its core values to the way that people function, just all of the entrepreneurial opportunities that were with the company,
Mm.
the passive income opportunities, all the things that I really wanted in real
Yeah.
estate were there in another format. So I had an amazing time at that event with my eyes being open to, gosh, this is bigger than just Hunters Creek or
Yeah.
Florida, right? And this company is amazing. Um, and then if you fast forward, so at that point, I'm doing this real estate thing and working and trying to make things work, but everything really shifted for me. I'm, as you know, very faith-based and again, felt like God called me here. That was 2011 when I went to Anaheim.
Okay.
In I don't remember what year. It was probably 2012 at some point. I was getting on the turnpike and I was very, very frustrated because there was not enough time in the day for me to get work done. And I was complaining to God about, like, I don't know why you have me here. There's not enough time in the day for me to get done what I need to get done. And I'm not doing a good job. You know my word. I'm a person of my word. And I'm not even able to do that because there's not enough time in the day. This was probably more like 13 because nope, it was probably 12. And so I um I get across town to an area that it was an investor's flip that I was going to be listing. And I had told them that I was going to do some staging 3 days ago. And if I tell you that I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And I was 3 days behind. And that's where my frustration was. And
Sure.
as I was there, this person pulls up and they said, "Hey, is this house for sale?" I said, "It is." And let me back up. I'd gone to pick something up to stage the house with, and I was putting it together in the back of my
Mm.
vehicle. This
Right.
guy pulls up and he says, ask about the house. And I said, "It is." Let me open the door, go in and take a look. I wanted to give him the freedom. It was vacant to comfortably look at the home.
Yeah.
It was really hot outside. And he shut the door and I heard him say, oh, maybe not so nice word, right? And I turned to look and he's holding this little girl and he said, "I just locked my keys in my car." And I said, "I am so sorry. Go inside, it's air conditioned. Let me call AAA for you." And he was stunned and he looked at me. He said, "You would do that?" And I said, "Sure." I said, "Go in. It's much cooler inside. Take your little girl in. I'll call AAA." Meanwhile, I'm outside putting together this little bistro set, right, to go in the front yard. And AAA shows up. And by the way, I'm putting it together with needle nose pliers. That's all I had in the back of my vehicle.
Yeah. Yeah.
AAA shows up, gets the guy all settled. The guy leaves. And I'd asked AAA when they pulled up, "Hey, you don't by chance have a 3/8 inch wrench, do you?" And he looked at me a little odd. And he said, "Let me get him settled and I'll let you know." Well, this guy had just been in the United States for no more than 2 years from Puerto Rico and didn't speak a lot of English, and I don't speak Spanish. And he gets the guy that with the baby all settled and off and on his way. And so he turns to me and he brings over his wrench and he starts putting the table together. And I'm like, "No, I can do it. No big deal." So he finishes putting it together. And then he asked me where I want the table. And I again, "Nope, I'm good. I can take care of this." And insists. So he goes and puts it down. And as we're walking back from where we put it down, he says to me, "You don't want to do this." And I stopped and I said, "I'm sorry." He said, "You don't even have to do this, but let me tell you why God has called you to do this." And this complete stranger who had only been in the country for 2 years reduced me to just a bucket of tears because I'd gotten on the turnpike complaining to God, and God sent me someone who spoke broken English to tell me why I am where I am. And that
Wow.
switched for me. It really did, because it wasn't just being a realtor anymore. It was being a purpose in someone's world. And it may be about helping them walk through one of the most emotional times of their lives, or helping them sell one of the biggest investments of their lives, or it may be just meeting to pray with them because they're going through a hard time. I remember getting a phone call once, and this person wanted to see a $2.5 million house. Again, this was probably 2015, 2014, a $2.5 million house over in Lake Mary. It was an internet lead.
Mhm.
And I went over there. I asked another agent in the office to join me if she wanted to, and she did. And we went over and we met this person. It wasn't about selling the $2.5 million house. That man's heart was so heavy that he was walking through some things with family members, and he just needed somebody to care and to be there and to pray with him.
Mm.
And that's the way that we are. And the people on my team are the same way. We know that this is about helping people. And sometimes it's not about the culmination of making money on a real estate deal. It's just about being the hands and feet that we need to be when we're there.
Wow, that's an amazing story. Wow, I did not know how just insane that is, where you had one mindset and you were frustrated, and then all of a sudden you just get this message that is completely transformational from a stranger. That's
Absolutely.
that's amazing. What an amazing story. Do you have that story? You got to share that story more often. Like you have to have that as part of your page or something. Like
Uh, I
that is
should.
such an
I do
amazing. That's
tell a
a
lot of people, but I
yeah.
do
That's an
put it out
that's
there.
a inspiring story. Awesome. Okay. All right. Cool.
Thanks.
So
Yeah.
one of the other things that that I really uh, just kind of struck me is, you lead, one of the masterminds in the market center, and we just kind of rebranded it and whatnot. And it, I think there are people who do things because they feel sort of an obligation, and then there are people that do things because they just have a passion for it. And here you are a very well-established agent in our market center in our area. Definitely one of the top agents in our office. And you really are willing to sit down and talk to people who are just getting started, who are
Mhm.
just trying to learn how to, you know, do the very basic fundamentals of this business. What is it that you feel drives you to be so passionate about that particular group? Because it seems like that group in particular, you sort of have a really uh, I don't even know the word to say. I guess a really soft place in your heart for that particular group. So what is it about that group that really sort of inspires you?
I um I know how hard it is to get started. I know how
Mm,
hard it is to know where the next step needs to be. You're drinking from a fire hose, and some of the fundamentals of what's going to get you traction and success get lost. And
yeah.
I think in trying to help them see the light, right, and focus on those things and to not make the same mistakes I've made and maybe
Yeah.
learn from my mistakes and get traction and success earlier, is just really to me, it means a lot to me when I can help somebody find success or take the next right step to
Hmm.
get into their path of success and help them get there. I love masterminds. It's one of my favorite. Collaboration is definitely a part of the way that I function and I do things. I know that there's just when you can throw a lot of minds into a situation, you come up with a lot of great options for answers, and that it's not one size
Sure.
fits all.
Yeah.
So that particular group for me is it's a comfort in being able to say, "Hey, I made a mistake here, and it probably set me back. Let's do it differently. Please lean
Mm.
into this and do this and find that pattern now." And I know that we lose a lot of people right? We have a lot of
Yeah.
people that come in real estate in general that will, get their real estate license. And what is that? You probably know that stat better than me.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, there's of the people that just kind of get out in the first year. It's like
yeah.
85%, 87%, something like that.
Isn't that crazy? Like that
It's
is
a lot.
just
Yeah.
crazy. And so you
Yeah.
have to ask why. Like, why is that? Is it just that
Hmm.
they thought that this was going to be a great idea and then changed their mind? I think it's the fact that they really don't know where to go and what to do and how to
Yeah.
find that traction. And yet so many people have the opportunity to not only change their lives in this industry, but change others' lives in this industry with the people that they
Yeah.
come in contact with. I mean, we have a big impact in lives that
Oh,
can
for
be a
sure.
positive impact. So that's
Yeah.
that's really where my passion comes from, trying to help them get traction quicker so they don't
Hmm.
have to make my mistakes. But then there are a lot of
Yeah,
people out there like me that want to make their own mistakes. So
for sure. For sure.
yeah.
So, obviously there's been a lot of changes in the real estate market, and this is one of the hot topics that people have been talking about. As it relates to the NAR settlement and the new rules that, for example, buyer agents have to do, and so on and so forth. There now there's the buyer broker agreement and all these commission compensation agreements that have to happen, new addenda that have just come in. It's just so much more paperwork that we're not used to, and of course, for the new people, that's just the normal because they're coming in new. But for those agents like you and I who've been doing this for a long time, a lot of this paperwork is kind of new. Now, what I wasn't sure about was how it was going to impact, I guess, the business overall for a lot of agents. I've been doing a buyer broker agreement since I started
Mhm.
business. So it really that was really wasn't impactful for me. But there were a lot of anxious agents in our market center for sure, and all around. I mean, just you saw it on the internet, and I heard it from other agents from other offices and other brokerages that they were just really nervous about it. And what is it? Started in the middle of August. We're now getting towards the end of September, and I don't think there's been, at least so in my coaching set in the coaching class with all the agents that are in there, they're not really getting a lot of pushback as it relates to the buyer broker agreement. And, everyone thought that there would be. I didn't think there'd be a lot, but I thought part of that was just like, hey, I'm just good at doing scripts. But, the truth of the matter is it's not that I'm so amazing. It's just that people just like, if that's the natural part of the process, that's what they do. It's normal. So, has that had an impact in your business? Is there anything that you guys have changed in terms of how you do business now that these new agreements are required? Like, how are you guys taking it? Has that had an impact to your business, both either positive or negative or anything like that?
Yeah, so I knew with these changes coming, there was a little bit of, I don't want to say trepidation, but question as to what that was going to look like when it played
Yeah.
out. There were so
Yeah.
many unknowns and so many conversations around it. Unlike you, I did not do a buyer broker. So this was new for me. I had to
Hmm.
figure out how to start incorporating that.
Yeah.
And my first thought was, okay, like any other challenge, we'll rise to the occasion, we'll make this happen. We're going to find the best practices to do that. I have found that, again, a mindset shift, that it affords me the chance to set my own value instead of having an agent on the other side set that value for me.
Yeah,
And once I wrapped myself around that, I was like, wow, we do a lot that people don't know that we do.
for
And
sure.
so when I was able to realize, well, wait a minute, I now have control of this and we can make this happen. So that was one thing for me that was kind of, again, a mindset shift from, oh, this is going to be a challenge to, wait a minute, I have a chance to control the outcome
This
of
is an
this
opportunity,
transaction.
right?
Yes. Um, has it been the biggest challenge for me is the change in the requirement, meaning our rote things that we do. Again, 82% of our business is repeat and referral. So I might get a phone call and we might go, sure, I'll meet you out at the house. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh, wait, we've got this buyer
Yeah.
thing, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Our past situation is we would show or we would meet the first time and then get them in for a buyer consult. Well, now this kind
Gotcha.
of changes things, right? Now we have to have this conversation ahead of time. So we're still morphing into what that looks like. Sometimes we'll do just if they don't know us very well and they really were just referred to us, but this house like is going to go to tonight, we might do
Hmm.
a single property just for that home. And I explain that the guidelines, oh goodness, we just went light, didn't we? The guidelines have been changed. And that this is required, but and here's the thing that I found though, Gus, the more confident I am in the conversation, the less pushback we
Yeah,
get.
for sure.
So it really is scripts and it is confidence in why are we doing it? What are we doing? And, just building that conversation around that. So it's just like having a new as is contract or something else that we're having to adjust. It's
Yeah.
finding that conversation and sharing it with confidence.
Yeah, what was interesting to me, and this is something the way that I kind of approached it from the beginning, anyways, is that because I would always hear agents, and mostly in other offices, but even sometimes in this office, that would talk about before this whole thing came together, that would talk about how using a buyer agent is free for the buyer. Oh,
Mm,
get a buyer agent, it's free. Get one. You don't have to, it's free, it's free, it's free. And I never really liked that approach because it suggests that there's no value, right?
right,
And so for me, like it's very normal. Like this is probably the only time, this is one of the only situations, right, where there is a service being offered, and even though the person who's receiving the service should be responsible for paying for that service, that that service cost can be negotiated from another person that's in the transaction.
right,
Under what other circumstances does that ever happen? That doesn't really
right.
happen anywhere else, right? Like usually, if you're getting an attorney, you get a financial planner, you get it doesn't matter what it is, you get a service, you pay for the service.
And they decide
There's
what
no
it is.
situation where you're like, oh yeah, hey doctor, can you please do surgery on me? And let's go ahead and have the patient over there pay for that. Like that
Right,
doesn't happen, right?
right,
So so it's one of those situations like where it's kind of like readjusting, like you said, sort of a mind shift of how to even think about it in the first place, because it's never been free. For me, it's always been the responsibility of the buyer to cover compensation. It's just it's customary for us to negotiate that from the other side. So
right,
it's really just kind of wrapping your head around that idea and that concept. And most people I think are they're used to the idea of I get a service and I have to pay for the service,
right.
right? Like that's very normal. You know what I
Absolutely.
mean?
Absolutely. I agree with you. I've been surprised too, Gus, at with this shift, how many people have in negotiating contracts,
Hmm.
they're like, well, we've had the conversation about compensation and how that's going to happen. And then as they're trying to figure out, I mean, I think about a first-time home buyer, which is the demographic that most people felt this was going to be the biggest challenge on.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about one recently, and her comment was, okay, but I need to make sure that you're paid. I need to make sure that you're taken care of. And I just remember thinking, wow, this is not at all what we expected from first-time home
Yeah.
buyers. It was like, how am I? But in this case, it was, all right, well, how, we need to make sure this is in here. And
Yeah.
3 or 4 times. So that really was impressive to me. And I've seen it a couple of times where that conversation has come up. And going back to your point of value, right? In the absence of value, money matters. But when value is
Yes.
there, it does not. So when value's there, I'm sorry, when value's there, it does not. So
Yes. Yes.
yeah, it's been an
Absolutely.
easier conversation and a growth conversation. I think this is going to continue to evolve. I keep seeing articles come out of changes and things that are happening. This isn't a one and done. This
Oh, for
time
sure.
here, we're going to be figuring out, okay, I think we've kind of settled into what this is going to look like. It's going to take a
Yeah.
while.
Well, I mean, I think the difficulty is that you have sort of a governing body that is not terribly familiar with the real estate business, that's
Right.
making rules for the real estate business, and without taking into consideration like the what ifs. And I think there's a lot of what ifs, especially in real estate. As you know, there's a lot of what ifs in real estate that can really be challenging. That's why we got 2 weeks ago the two new addenda came out regarding how if a seller is offering credit and a portion of that credit is going to the buyer agent, what is that? You have to disclose that now, and there's a contingency if you don't get your the compensation agreement signed within some certain time, that the deal is off, and all kinds of other stuff. So,
Right.
this stuff is really it's probably going to get a little more complicated before it gets easier, is my
Agreed.
thought, because they're going to try to still keep like patching until they
Agreed.
figure out like, okay, hold on, it's getting too complicated.
Yep.
let's review this and find a clean way
Absolutely.
to do this, right?
Absolutely.
But I think that's going to be real, I think ultimately it's going to, make our industry much more professional, right? We're going to find that the professionals are going to kind of rise to the top, and the ones that are kind of just dabbling are going to kind of go away because it's going to be a little bit too much liability and too complex,
Too
for
complicated.
them to for them to just dabble.
I completely agree. I think it's interesting because the whole morphing process that you were just describing, it's very much you can't just get your license and say, okay, I'm done, I'm a realtor. There's a
Yeah,
constant growth curve without this whole new NAR settlement
for
situation.
sure.
There's always been a constant growth curve.
Oh
And
yeah.
I appreciate the comment about it's going to make people more professional and we're going to see less dabblers. Very much the case. And I think all along, people should have been looking more for not just any agent realtor. I mean, most people know more than one realtor, right?
Oh,
But
for sure.
one who is staying on top of things, educational minded, looking at things. The number of times that I've seen people lose money because of the agent that they chose is
Yeah.
heartbreaking to me. So I'm hoping that this gives less opportunity for that, that there's more, more people who are definitely in the business and learning the changes and taking care
Yeah.
of it at a high level.
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the things that I was having a conversation with a few agents in the office, and something that kind of came to my mind because now, there's now the seller in the listing agreement has the option to do the traditional way, which is what we've always done. They pay a broker, and then the broker splits it with another broker. So that's the traditional way. They also now have the option of paying the broker directly and then paying the listing broker directly and then paying the buyer broker themselves as opposed to going through the
Mhm.
listing broker. And then they have the option of not offering anything at all, right? And one of the things that just kind of came to mind to me yesterday, actually, we were having a discussion, and because if they select the option to pay the buyer broker separately, right? Where the listing broker is not involved in the compensation for the buyer broker, and an offer comes in. Um, the thing that I wasn't sure about, if the seller already offers compensation, let's say of 3%, let's say hypothetically, they say, oh, well, yeah, I'll pay directly to the buyer's agent 3%. But the buyer broker puts in an offer and doesn't submit a compensation agreement with that seller. The seller is not obligated to pay the compensation, even though they had identified that in the listing agreement, because the
Right.
buyer broker has to have an agreement with the seller directly for compensation to happen.
Right.
So that I was like thinking about that. I was like, oh my goodness, that could totally happen. I could totally see that happening where there's just like an expectation that they're going to get paid because people are not
Absolutely.
paying attention. And agents are, if an agent is not really, following the new protocol, where they can go through this whole process, help the person out, and then now the buyer is essentially on the hook for the broker compensation. And is the buyer broker going to go after the buyer? Probably not.
No.
They're just going to have lost that, right?
Right.
They're done. And so I ended up calling Murray to ask about that. I'm like, hey, is the seller obligated to pay if the buyer broker doesn't have like an agreement with the seller under that situation? And he said, nope, they don't have any obligation to pay. They didn't make any agreement with the seller, because that's the way that's supposed to work, because the seller is willing to pay, but not through the brokerage. That means that the buyer broker has to have that agreement with the seller in order for them to be compensated. And
Right.
just even little nuances like that, just kind of just like, I just like, oh my
Absolutely.
goodness, you know
Well,
what
I
I
mean,
mean? Like,
real estate, there's no consistent, right? So there's no way that we could prepare for every situation that's going to come up. Same
right?
thing, circle back when people start, they think, well, I want to learn it all before.
Yeah,
That's not going to happen because it's
yeah,
people and there's going to be a new vantage point each
yeah,
time. So the same thing on this new situation, it's going to keep coming up with the, oh, I hadn't thought about that. So what do we do? I'm
yeah.
going to get some of the big things. One that happened to me just recently. So we've just started, right or wrong. Again, I think best practices are going to show up further down the road.
Hmm.
This is where I can't wait to
Yeah,
get,
there's no way to know what the best practices are. There's no
no,
practices.
no, right. get producing agents together and mastermind around this, right? And watch
Yeah.
it work out. So one of the thoughts I've had is maybe having a monthly or a quarterly group of people to get together and go, okay, here's what we're finding.
Hmm.
But that being said, the one of the things we've done is we've just started making it a part of the negotiations of the contract. I don't call, I don't find out what's being offered. I just make it a part of a negotiation of the contract. Transparency was what this was all about. That's pretty darn transparent. It's
Sure,
a part of
sure.
the contract. You know, the buyer agent, I mean, the buyer knows what we've agreed to and they know what we're negotiating in the contract.
Yeah.
So, um, so that's the approach that we've taken. Now, what happened recently was an agent called me and went, well, the seller was offering this, and since we're negotiating, now she's offering this. And I had to call my broker because our listing agreement says this. So it really, and I thought, well, how interesting. And I really don't care because we've negotiated this in the contract, right? It
Right.
becomes a part of the negotiation. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
and
that I think the negotiation component of it is just it's changing the dynamics of that, right?
mhm,
So, in the commercial space, which is pretty much all of my business, that has been sort of a normal practice, right? Now, sometimes the seller is offering compensation or the landlord is offering compensation, and sometimes they're not. And the thing that the trick is, and I think that a lot of agents miss this with the new changes is just because they're not offering compensation doesn't mean they're unwilling to pay it.
right,
So, and we see this in commercial where like, no, the seller's not offering compensation, right? They're not offering compensation. That doesn't mean they won't pay it.
right,
So we go ahead and we just go ahead through the negotiation process. And in the contract, we just include, hey, there's going to be a compensation. The seller agrees to compensate the brokers and blah, 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 blah. And then let's submit it and see how it goes, right?
right,
And sometimes they'll say, yeah, we'll take that. And sometimes they'll say no, and they'll offer less or adjust the whatever, they'll adjust different terms, whatever makes sense, right? And then at the end of the day, whatever you finalize is ultimately the deal. And then if the buyer has to make up some of the difference, whatever the case, right? You kind of figure
right.
that out. But that's been sort of a normal practice in the commercial world. So now that we're starting to see that now in the residential world, which is really interesting to see. It was interesting to see like how many people. Well, first, I've always had the buyer broker agreement, so that wasn't a big deal. But negotiating the commission was never a thing, and I always tried. Like I would call Mary and be like, "Are you sure I can't negotiate this commission from the
Mm,
seller?" Like, and he's like, "No, whatever MLS says, that's what you can get." I'm like, "Oh man, I really want to negotiate that, right?"
yeah,
And they weren't able to, so I would have to do some kind of like concession, and then the buyer would pay from the concessions or whatever the case. It was like a workaround. So it was just the deer. It really it was impressive, and I don't know if it's a good thing. It was impressive to me to see how many people were like deer in headlights when this all kind of when the hammer came down. Like
mm,
just all the agents walking around the market center with just deer in headlights, like, I don't know how do I don't,
right,
should I even be in this business anymore? And like literally thinking like it's over, it's done. This whole
right.
business it's a kaputz, right? I'm not going to be able to ever do this again. And not realizing that, hold on, you've been doing listings this whole time. It's the same.
Right, right,
It's the same. It's the same thing. You've been having these listing conversations. You do 12 to 15 deals a year, 20 deals a year, like and you're all listings. Like, what's the difference? It's the conversation is just on the buy side now instead of on the sell side, right? On the list side. So it's just interesting to me, like how people we're such creatures of habit. I think that's what it is, right? We're creatures of
so
habit. And then when something changes, we're like, oh my God, how are we going to possibly be able to? There's no way we can do this differently. We've been doing it like this forever. How can we possibly change our modus operandi, right?
totally, totally agree. And I love the fact that the whole commercial side has been there. And essentially we're just bringing that over to the residential side right now. But yeah, the conversations of the real estate industry is ending. Like this is, it was doomsday. This never
Yeah.
going to work. It's never going to happen. And again, I think it's such an opportunity.
Yeah.
Everything's negotiable. Everything is always
Absolutely.
negotiable, right? And you never know someone's pain point or what they're willing to do. People will call and go, "Hey, well, you're a seller, be willing to take blah blah." I don't know. Send me an offer and let me ask them. I never know
Yeah. Yeah.
what they're going to say until I put something in front of them. And they may say, "I'm not doing this," but that day they're doing this. So
Yeah.
that's the way that I feel about the situation. I don't care what they're offering. It's now a part of what we're asking and in
Yeah.
negotiating. And I kind of find that exhilarating and fun.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
I
I
enjoy
think
it.
the timing also worked out quite nicely because um, this would have been a much harder, I think it would have been a lot harder for people if we were still in the seller's market.
Oh, yes.
Like if we were still in the seller's market, because, in the seller's market, it's just, you have so many buyers and, you know, um, there's just so much of a frenzy to buy a house, right? That people are not as cautious about moving forward with a purchase during a seller's market, which is interesting to me because, you know, um, you know, that's the time when you're likely to pay the most money for a property, right? But buyers are much more enthusiastic about wanting to make a purchase during a
Right.
seller's market, and then a buyer's market, the opposite is the case. But during a buyer's market, that is the time where that caution is really making you think twice about, well, should I be doing this on my own, right?
Right.
So I think the timing kind of just happened to work out. I don't, I don't know. Obviously that wasn't on purpose, right? Just things kind of aligned that way.
I did.
But that the timing kind of worked out quite nicely because now because it's a buyer's market, the buyers are cautious and they know that like I need to make sure that I'm working with someone who is knowledgeable and knows what they're doing because I don't want to make a mistake here, right?
Absolutely. And
Uh,
the other piece that comes is the trust in the person that they're working with, right?
yeah.
I think that was one of my concerns going in. And one of the reasons that I didn't do buyer broker, let me just tell you that one of the reasons that I didn't do
Hmm.
buyer broker in the beginning was, I'll just share a quick story. I had a young man who had come to me. I don't even remember how he came to me as far as a lead source. He was not a referral. He came to me and needed help buying a home, and he was relocating to the Orlando area, I believe from the Ohio area. And long story short, I found out at some point that he had signed a buyer broker with an
Hmm.
agent who had not been taking care of him, who had
Oh,
not been doing what he needed to do. And
yeah.
he signed a buyer broker for the entire state of Florida for like a year.
Mm,
And I was so disgusted with the fact that you've got this person tied into this buyer broker. You're not doing the job that you need to do. Um, and so that put a bad taste in my mouth for the buyer broker. And
mm,
my philosophy had always been, I want to earn your business to stay in business with you. I want to give you the value that I know we're going to give so that you're willing to be here,
yeah.
not rope you in. So it was a mindset again about the buyer
Yeah.
that started off in a negative situation. Fast forward to where we are now. I'm really hoping that people are a little bit more cautious about what they're signing. You and I
Mm,
both know, even when we're signing, doing contracts for houses, offers for houses, it is amazing to me the people who just blatantly sign an agreement. Like I will go over
yeah.
everything and make sure they understand all the details, but I'm just surprised at the trust that is put in someone out there and they just sign it. So the same thing
Yeah.
buyer broker. I hope that they will make sure that the time limits fit what they need, that they know that, if they needed to get out, that they could, that the agent shows up and does what they need to do. Um,
Yeah.
and I don't know how I got off on that tangent you were talking about. I apologize, but that's been one of my concerns, and that's where that mindset shift had to come for me. Now, I know what we're giving, and I know the advantage and the value that we're giving, and I also know that if we're not the fit, I'm not going to like make them stay. Like my
Yeah.
goal
Yeah.
is for them to
Exactly.
get what they need, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And that's actually a tactic that me and as the residential agents on my team, we actually the way that we utilize that particular strategy is we don't charge any cancellation fees.
Right.
So we let them know up front, listen, we're not gonna if you don't think that we're a good fit, like we don't want to, hold you hostage because you don't think that we're a good fit. If we're not meeting your expectations, then you let us know. Just send us just send us an email in writing, letting us know, and we're gonna probably ask what happened, right? But other than
Right.
that, and we'll try to hopefully we can try to fix it, for the next person if we can't resolve it with you, because that our goal here is to earn your business, and if we're not earning your business, then we don't want to hold you hostage to that.
Absolutely.
So, and that's just a tactic that we use. Now, obviously, not every agent does that, and that's not good or bad. It's just a tactic that we're leveraging. So, the next, I guess, the next question I have for you, because there are all these sort of adjustments in the market, as an agent, and this is going to be something that I think is important for other agents to kind of hear, is like, what are you doing in your business to kind of shift, as the market is shifting, obviously we have to also shift our business. And what are some things that you guys are doing, like in terms of your approach to real estate, your approach to clients, or anything like that, that you feel is necessary in order to adjust with the shifting market that's happening? Because obviously we went from a seller's market last year, and now, I mean, even though all the data is not in, all of the, with regard to months on, inventory and stuff like that, because I think as of August, we were still at like 4 or 5 months of inventory. But there's so many properties that are currently active on the market that haven't been touched. Pendings are down,
Mhm.
right? So month over month, year over year, like we're just seeing the data is pretty clearly showing that we're leaning heavy. If we're not already in a buyer's market, by next month for sure we're going to be in a buyer's
Absolutely.
market, right?
Absolutely.
So what is it that you guys are doing to kind of adjust for that? Because that's a critical factor. We can't certainly can't continue to move as we did in a seller's market. So what kind of things are you guys like talking about or thinking about doing to kind of adjust, or if you've already done?
So I feel that is such a multifaceted question. I mean, first of all, we are, trying to stay on top of what's happening in the market.
Mhm.
You know, that's always looking in arrears, and when we're looking at data, but
Yeah,
you feel what happens before you see the data that supports what you're feeling.
for sure.
And that it requires a pivot. It requires a pivot in how we're approaching things. Like, you know, July 2020, I think we were at between a 2 and a 3 month supply of inventory, and all you had to do was list a home, put it on the market, and you had a gazillion offers, right? You didn't
Oh
really have
yeah,
to
yeah,
do anything
yeah,
to
yeah.
make it
You
happen.
you could
So,
you could have done an iPhone picture of a house and sold it, which
yep.
we saw.
Absolutely, we did. And you're like, how did that happen? Um, and we're not there right now. Even with professional photography and other situations, we are having to look at, why is this property not moving? What's happening
Yeah,
here? So, and then,
yeah.
and then what is the answer for that? So, being a problem solver, one of the things that I just recently, I have three potential listings right now that all need to come to what people are looking for in the market. We've created this demographic of buyers that want HGTV homes, right? They want
Mm,
the model type home out there. And then you have sellers who are like, I don't want to put money into a house that someone's going to rip it out and do something different. Like, I hate to waste that money to get it
yeah,
sold. So that's one of the conversations we've been having to work around. Now, one of the things that I've looked at through the years and not implemented, that I'm looking at a little bit more, is how do I meet that need? And for me, one of those things is, again, going back to the fact that we're quickly going to a buyer's market, how do I get them to buy this property over the others? And so you have to look and see what's out there, what's our competition, and what do I need to do to make us better than the
yeah,
competition? So if a seller's not willing to do it, what are the options to do that?
yeah,
Could we offer could we offer some type of we'll remodel it for you, we'll project manage for you, then we'll put it on the market? Yeah, but we hate to put that. Like, there's all sorts of ways that you have to have multiple options for them. One that just occurred to me a couple of days ago, and is probably being done by someone out there, is I actually called a designer, an interior designer, and said, hey, I have this house. I was thinking of doing this, but I was wondering if you'd be willing to come and look at it and put a design board together. and let's talk about some of the upgrades that need to be done. And let's put some form of a package there that somebody who's not visual can see, wow, this is what that kitchen would look like with these options, almost like having new construction, but in a rebuild. I mean, in a
Interesting.
resale.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we're thinking about trying that. That will be a growth in process to see like cost and how that plays out. And interesting there, I went in and I showed a house the other day and they had done that, but it wasn't quite done in a way that people could feel like you still had countertops missing. There
Hmm.
were things that weren't, it didn't give you the feel of the transition that you wanted. So,
Yeah, yeah.
um, so we'll
I like
see.
that idea though. I love that idea. That's a really interesting idea. I mean, if you were able to like quote an estimate, like get a contractor to kind of quote an estimate for approximately what the cost of that redesign would look like, you could, in theory, kind of price the home as if it were at that price point,
Hmm.
like as if it were already done, and then do a like a built-in discount of that value as like let's say cashback at closing or something like that, right? Where you have sort of like something kind of built in, like you've already built in a bit of a negotiating pillow, right?
Yep.
So that the buyer can come in and be like, because the thing is that by having one of the things that I leverage anchoring in negotiation all the time, right? This idea that you kind of you start at a number that is either way higher or way lower, depending on what side the negotiation table you're on, then you're willing to adjust to just to anchor, right? So you might say, yeah, this house is $400,000, right? And then, however, we could probably get it to you for 425 or for 325. So if you, or rather for 375 as an example, right? So now the person already has in their mind that it's $400,000. This is the value of the property, but because there are some things that need to get done, there's a little bit of a discount that can be applied, and now 375 is the discounted rate, and that feels like a really good deal. Like hey,
Right.
this is the value, this is the discount, okay. But if you just did the discount without showing what the actual value is, now the person doesn't think that they're getting a discount at 375. They think that that's the value. You see what I'm saying?
I do.
So
I think that's
if
excellent.
if you were able to turn like if you were able to get a contractor to come in and kind of quote approximately what it would cost to do that, and then you kind of tie that all in as part of the package, like, hey, and we have a contractor we can connect you with that said that they'll do it for this amount of money and blah 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 blah, and whatever the case may be, then now that I can see how that could work really well. That's a really great idea.
I'm looking forward to putting it in play and seeing it. Like I said, I have
Yeah.
three really great homes that are not going to sell for what they want them to sell for
Hmm.
because of the condition and the updates
Gotcha.
that are needed. And at the same time, I appreciate in some ways, well, do I put in quartz? Do I put, what color do I paint the walls? Well, if we can give that option, buyers want options, right? If we can give that option and they
Yeah.
can choose the trade-off of I'm not willing to pay that much, but I'll pay this and only do this room or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. Well, it's
Very,
like
very
the idea of
early
like
stage.
what new construction does when they say you got flex cash.
Yeah, great idea. Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? How
absolutely.
they do that? Like, hey,
Yes,
the seller's offering flex cash, and then you can use it towards compensation. You can use it towards whatever the case, right? There's this flex cash that's available that's
it's
being
great.
offered. New construction has been leveraging that for a long time. There's no reason why regular homes couldn't do that as well, right?
See why I love masterminding? That's why. Thank
Yeah,
you. I love that.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yes. And the other thing is we also have, if you have a really strong lender, we also have the opportunity that if that's what they chose to do based upon how it's negotiated out and choices made, it can be a part of the loan.
Oh
Like
yeah, like a
it,
renovation loan kind of deal. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
So
Yeah,
there's so many ways it can go right now, and they don't have to sell to an investor for an investor to make that profit. There's a way to
correct,
make a little bit more money in, and they don't have to sell to Open Door and Offer Pad.
correct.
There's a little bit more money out there to put in their pocket, maybe not the whole amount, but a little bit more, and you bring
Yeah.
both parties together and everybody gets a deal and a win.
I think this really leans into like my whole thought on the shift for this is that, because buyers are a lot more wary, right? This element of education is really going to be a critical part of the process, right?
Totally agree.
Letting both buyers and sellers, like educating them in a way to help them to understand what are the options, what are the pros, what are the cons, like what can they, how can they resolve these challenges, and really getting them educated so that they can feel confident to be able to make a sound decision that's going to be in their best interest, right? And I think that if that is indeed the thing that is going to be the lever, then this also leans into the idea of having to be more professional, because the only way that you're going to be able to be able to do that is you have to be educated, which is going to
Right.
make you more professional to be able to share those options in the first place. Because if you don't know that there's a renovation loan, if you don't know that you can do some of these things that you're talking about, and kind of a little bit out of the box of what you traditionally have seen in the past, if you don't know that those things are possible, you're not going to be able to help your client,
Right.
because that if you don't know, you can't share that with them, right?
Absolutely. And I'm sure, Gus, in the commercial world, there's always a way to make something work, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean,
Go ahead.
well, no, I mean, there is a little bit of a difference. So the difference in commercial versus residential is, in residential real estate, there are guardrails, right? And those guardrails are designed to protect the buyer and the seller, because typically people, when they buy a home or they sell a home, it's probably one or two homes, right, that they've done before. It's not something they regularly do. So the government feels like they're not considered as sophisticated as someone who's, let's say, an investor in commercial,
Right.
who's a little bit more sophisticated. They're going in there for the purpose of investment, so they understand that there's a lot more risk involved. There's more due diligence that's required. So there's in residential, there are guardrails to protect both sides to ensure that there's not any issues or problems. In commercial, there are no guardrails. So, whatever everyone agrees to is kind of how the deal happens, right? And that could be beneficial to both sides. It could not be beneficial to both
Right.
sides. Like it could be it could be horrid. But if that's what everyone agreed to, then that's what it is, right? So, for me on the commercial side, like education is sort of a critical part of my business, because I have to know. Otherwise, this $1 million investment that my clients buying or selling can completely just be completely derailed. They can lose a crap ton of money, right? And it could just be a disaster. And as you know, it doesn't matter what part of real estate you're in. This is a business that is reliant on reputation, and if
Mm.
your reputation gets tainted as someone who doesn't know what they're doing, or just is a train wreck, or whatever, like, word gets around fast. And in the
It does.
commercial world, there's not as many commercial agents. So, like, I'm one of only like a handful in the area. So if there's not, like, I can't hide amongst other agents. Like, people are gonna
Right.
know who I am,
Right.
so so I would say that is the difference. But I will say that that doesn't mean that there isn't opportunities in residential to negotiate a lot of different elements, and that there aren't a bunch of opportunities, because there's also a lot of different programs that are designed for
Right.
residential that you don't see in commercial. So, like, for example, the renovation program you mentioned, that doesn't exist necessarily exist in commercial. There is some variant of that, but it's a different way that they frame it. But it's not the same way, right? Where it's like, hey, buy a distressed property, and then we're going to give you this additional loan to fix the property up and make it the way you want, which is a great program, right? There's no
Mhm.
zero down loan program. There's no, like, down payment assistance program. All those things are built for residential, but that's awesome. These are opportunities, I think, in the residential space, to be able to educate both the buyer and the seller on what kind of options are available. And I even think that there's even something to be said about working with, if you're even on the list side, to start really opening, like, the partnerships with what traditionally are partners on the buy side. So having, like, preferred lenders, for example, where the lender's a legitimate lender, or they have really great programs. So, for example, if you know that your house is the house that you're listing, it needs renovations, well, it may be beneficial to have a lender that specifically has a renovation program that's in place, that they can go ahead and apply. Hey, listen, our lender already has this. And most lenders have access to it, but that
Mhm.
doesn't mean that they necessarily will share it. because lenders
Right.
are like realtors, right? Like you're only as good as the person that actually has the knowledge. And some lenders I've talked to are just clueless, right? Just
Absolutely.
like some realtors are. Like it's like
Yep.
anything, like any industry. So having a lender who's familiar with the different programs that could potentially help your listing would maybe a good idea to say, hey, listen, if you use this lender, maybe there's an incentive to do that. You know, the seller will offer an extra $1,000 concession to the buyer for using the preferred lender. And you know that the lender's legit, you know the lender's been vetted, right? So those kinds of things may even be worth considering, just like new construction does.
Absolutely. Just to your point, just because they have the program doesn't mean that they're good at it.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's really important. I know, this is a conversation I'm sure you have. We have, not all lenders are the same. It's
Yeah.
really important that, we can stand behind the lender that we're working with if we're on the buy side and
Yeah.
we're having to compete or even convince the listing agent, hey, here's the lender, here's what I know that they do.
For
Like you
sure.
need a strong lender that's a problem solver. But yeah, I think that that is a big part of the right team and a
Oh,
great,
absolutely.
great
And
suggestion for those
I
listings.
know that like new construction, they leverage their lenders really heavily, and
Mhm.
they by giving them all the business, they get these sort of a little bit more cash back at closing, or maybe they get some points towards that are is paid for by by the builder or something like that, or however they negotiate that. I wonder, this is just sort of me thinking out loud. I wonder if brokerages might want to consider doing something like that with their preferred lenders to, if they, hey, listen, we'll make you the preferred lender for our entire brokerage. The exchange that we're asking for is for every deal that you do, you give cash back at closing, or you do some kind of you help to buy down points or for the buyer. So that way, like we just like new construction, you know, just like they get these benefits for being part of the new construction builder, that hey, we have a brokerage, we have in our case we have about 170 agents in our office, and we do, I don't know, probably like 1,000+ homes a year, which is way more than the builder does. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Great idea.
could we work something out with a lender to do something similar where, hey, we have a preferred lender, if you use our preferred lender you get this benefit, right? So
So, interesting. I think that that was done at one time at a national level with
mhm.
Keller Mortgage.
Yes,
That
I remember that.
Yeah, and I think we're kind of in transition with them. I think they were combined, bought out. I don't know with
I think they got bought out. Yeah, yeah,
Omaha. So I don't know really where we are, but they had done that at a national level. They'd already given thought to that. And then
yeah,
and you know what I love about this is that ideas like this are great ideas that come up and then we implement them. And the problem is we run into a roadblock. And sometimes it's just easier to give up than it is to pivot, right? To find, okay,
yeah,
what's
yeah.
in peace. But I think that's a great idea I mean, it would be an added value for everyone, the buyer, the seller, the lender.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, I think what, with Keller Mortgage, I don't know what happened with them. I mean, I think that part of the challenge, because Keller Williams obviously is a international organization. But Keller Mortgage in particular, they're trying to implement that at scale. I mean, they're trying to
Right.
do this on the entirety of the United States, which I'm sure is a huge endeavor and can be challenging in
Absolutely.
and of itself, and having to navigate the logistics of that can be really challenging. But if you did something like that with just a local lender who already has that infrastructure, if they're national or regional, but you're just kind of working with a local lender to kind of implement that. I know obviously that doesn't necessarily benefit Keller Mortgage per se, but you also don't have to worry about whether or not Keller Mortgage can handle
Right.
whether or not they're even in the position to be able to do that in the first place. But maybe this is one of those things where you kind of look at some of the local lenders in the area to see if they would be willing to participate. I mean, they do
Great.
that with, I mean, we see that, I've seen that with Movement Mortgage, with FBC, with the other local like big mortgage brokers that are in the area. They partner with these builders, and I've seen them as preferred lenders with these builders, the ones that don't have their own lender in-house, right? They'll partner with those guys and
Yep.
offer incentives just like they would anyone else.
It's a
So
great
if
idea.
if they can do that with builders, why couldn't they do that with a mortgage, like a not a mortgage, a brokerage, right? A
Right.
real estate brokerage where, we clearly have a pretty high volume of business. So just, I think that these are the kinds of things that, especially with the transition, I think like key partnerships are going to be a really big part of the strategy, right? That needs to be a big part of the strategy.
Agreed. Yep. Building out that strong team. That's a great idea. We have to make sure we have conversation around that.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. So, all right. So I don't want to keep you. I know that, we all got that we got to get back into the business. I know it's Friday and we got a hurricane that we got to thwart down here, even though it's past us and we're fine. We got it's funny, we got a lot of phone calls last night from like family and friends. Hey, are you guys okay? Is everything all right? You guys
Yes.
surviving? I'm like, yeah, no, we're good. It's like it didn't really get to us. It was like over there, right? So luckily we're like, we're good. So that worked out for us. We missed the storm. Hopefully Tallahassee. I haven't seen any news on Tallahassee. I know they got hit last night, so hopefully they're surviving. Have you seen anything on them?
I have not. No,
Yeah.
I wanted to. Yeah, I'm worried because I know this is one of the biggest in a while. And
Yeah, and Tallahassee's not built for hurricanes because they don't typically get hurricanes. So it's very
yeah,
plausible that they may get a lot more damage than what you would typically see from like Florida hurricanes, because
right.
typically most of the beach communities typically are built pretty decently for that. But so hopefully they're okay. I'll probably see some news later today, and hopefully we'll pray for them, and that they're okay. So before we go,
Hmm.
for anyone who is who's just gotten into the business, right? And I know this is an area of passion for you, so I really want to get your 2 cents here. For anyone who's just starting in business, what is something that you can share with them that you feel is really important for them to understand as they go through the process of starting their business, like year one, year two? Like, what is something that is going to be really important for them to just have in their soul to understand about this business, so that they can get through it? Because these first 2 years are going to be really challenging, right?
Yeah.
It's a really challenging time for an entrepreneur in general. In real estate, it's a really challenging process. So I'd love to kind of just hear your just sort of last 2 cents of like, hey, what would you tell someone who's just getting started in the business, and they're in their first or second year and they're struggling?
You know, it's a people business, and that's a very simple sentence, but it's a deep sentence. And
Mm,
we think we're going to get into real estate and it's just going to magically, business is going to come. And it
yeah.
does. I think for me, when someone joins my team, one of the first things, or whether I'm talking to a new agent or somebody who is pre-licensing, the first thing I tell them to do is I want you to start building a database. Even if you open
Mm,
up an Excel spreadsheet and get to 100 names as soon as possible with
mm,
names, emails, phone numbers, then get it to 250, because a database is your business. And then staying in communication with that database, but more importantly, having a time set aside that you consistently have real estate conversation, not and I want to change the mindset shift on this too. It doesn't have to be, I'm calling for sale by owners, I'm calling expireds, having real estate conversations every day. Um, and that locomotive, when you do that, when you're feeding those
mhm,
conversations of where you are or being purposeful in the people that you're calling and getting them into the database, that locomotive is like throwing coal into that locomotive, right? And it starts moving, it starts moving, and it starts moving. And then all
mm.
of a sudden, it's going down the track really fast.
It has
So it's a
momentum. Yeah.
slow and then fast process when you do what you need to do, which is have a system, which is the database, and have conversations around the people in that database while having conversations and adding to it. That is going to be the foundation. I didn't do it early on, and it's very painful. It is extremely painful when you're redoing that when you're further down the road on the
Yeah.
train, right? And trying to stop and be consistent with that. The most important thing I think is don't give up.
Mm,
Don't give up. It's a person that you need, it's a conversation you need to have. It's a small thing that you need to change to be able to find that success, but consistency is the issue. And that consistency is a constant battle. It's
yeah.
it's just a consistency in what, where it might be conversations early on for you. For me, it
Yeah.
might be that I have more conversations I need to have to break
Right.
that ceiling, right? Consistency is the foundation of doing
That's
business
awesome.
every day. That's whether
Yeah.
it's real estate or whether it's any other entrepreneurial situation. What is the
Okay.
action step I need to be consistent in?
That's awesome. I love it. I love it. All right,
Thank
awesome.
you.
Well, listen, Tanya, where can people find you if they need to, if they have any questions about real estate or anything like that? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
My number, you can reach out to me, text me, call at 407 or TaniaMatthewsTeam.com.
That's easy enough. And that's Matthews with two T's, right?
Matthews with two T's and Tania, Tania. Yep.
Perfect. Perfect.
Thanks.
Awesome. Okay, great. So, listen, Tanya, I really appreciate you taking the time this morning to chat with me. I know that you're traveling, so I appreciate you fitting me in. This has been a
Blessings.
really, yeah, it's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much. So, this has been Tanya Matthews here on the Anomaly podcast with myself, Gus Ortiz. If you guys like what you're hearing, please make sure you comment. Please share if there's anything else that you guys want to hear about, or any topics that you want me to cover with any of our guests. Please make sure you comment below and let me know so we can continue to bring wonderful guests like Tanya Matthews here with the Tanya Matthews team, and continue to educate as many people as possible about what's happening in real estate, and how you can benefit from it, whether you are on the buy side, sell side, or if you're an agent. So thanks again. I will see you next time. And thank you again, Tanya, for your time.
Thank you, Gus. It was fun. Talk soon.
Awesome. All right. Talk to you later. Take care.